Hello and welcome to Conscious TV. My name is Renate McNay and my guest today is Jensen. Hello, Christine. Christine is a specializes in trauma resolution work, and we are going to talk about trauma in spirituality and why trauma is in the way to fully awaken. We also hear Christina's own story of awakening. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, Renata.
Yeah.
Nice
So,
to be
Christine, your life started with a big trauma or drama. Would you like to tell us what happened?
Well, I was brought up in Australia, and my mother was
in the outbacks of Australia.
Way in the outback. In fact, we didn't have any roads, we didn't have any street lights, there was no telephone. And when my mother was pregnant with me, she had a serious fall and started to hemorrhage. And she was probably about 7 or 8 months pregnant with me. And of course, I don't have a memory of this. But of course, we were living remotely. My father was working as a geologist away, and she was on her own. So she propped herself up with some cushions. We had a very faithful dog at the time, and she tied a note to his collar and just said, "Paddy, go and get help." Our nearest neighbour was about 2 miles away at the time. So Paddy faithfully trotted off, and our neighbour had a telephone and rang, and the doctor came.
So he came to the neighbour took the note?
Paddy was a Kelpie, which was a very a loyal type of dog, so you know, and it's one reason I still love dogs, actually. But so the day was saved, and I'm here to tell the tale. I think if he hadn't have sent that note, then my mother probably would have died.
Yes.
But I do feel that experience has actually coloured my life, really, and or it's certainly the beginnings of my life and the beginnings of my spiritual journey at the time.
So how did it colour your life? I mean, you said in your notes that it actually was the very thing which set you on a spiritual path.
Yeah, I would say so. I have one of my earliest memories is when I was about as young as 3 or 4, and I used to tie my arm to the bedpost and put my hand up, and I thought, well, if I can keep my hand and my arm there for long enough, God will touch my hand. Yes. And I had a feeling of I wanted to get back home. I wanted to go back to the angels. And I have a sense that in almost dying, and my mother almost dying, that I was actually kind of almost taken back because I nearly died. Yeah. And that feeling, that sense of wanting to go home then was so strong that it played out then in my early life. And it set me on a quest to find the divine, I suppose, something that was bigger than me.
So, did you have, as a child, some kind of sense what that home is about, what that means?
I just knew there was something out there that was bigger than me.
Yeah.
And it was something that we would all return to, and somehow it was holding me. Somehow it was holding me.
Yes, and you also were always very close to nature.
Yeah.
You loved watching the stars, and you actually said you only understand now how important that was, your connection to and is important for all of us for regulation and harmony for our nervous system.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Can you say more about that?
I think that we actually we entrain from the earth itself. In other words, there is a pulse which comes from the earth. It's actually been measured in hertz.
Yeah.
And we can take this pulse comes through our bodies and helps harmonize and regulate our nervous systems. Yeah. And so I know that as a child climbing trees and looking at the stars. My father, as a hobby, was an astronomer, and he built a huge telescope, and we used to spend summer evenings lying outside on the ground looking at the stars. And so I think we absorb this from nature itself, really. And you know, the sky, the stars, the earth, water, the fire, you know, all the elements were there, really.
And do you think, because probably most of humans don't feel this pulse anymore.
No.
Because we are so disconnected from nature, we get more and more paranoid.
I'm sure of it. I'm sure. I mean, in my work as a trauma therapist, I see a lot of people who are very, very dysregulated, and they're cut off from a sense of connection with others and with the earth itself. And in fact, sometimes I'm a good one for giving homework, and some of the homework I might give is go and stand barefoot on the earth, half an hour a day.
Yes.
And literally they're sucking up negative ions from the earth, and this can actually help stabilize their nervous systems.
Yes.
And these are kind of old ways that, you know, we've forgotten about. We don't tend to think that this is, you know, so valid, but it really is.
Yeah, I remember my grandmother. She would take her shoes or slippers off in the morning, and she loved walking, you know, when the grass was still damp from the night.
Yeah.
And that was her healing path, her meditation. Yeah.
There's enough good research around that's been done to show that we actually absorb these negative ions,
Yes.
and they have an effect on regulating our nervous system.
Yes. Mm.
So yeah, I was a great one for nature.
Yeah. So, and then what happened when you were 20 years old? You got involved in a religious movement, a cult. And you were saying you took on a lot of dogmas. Can you tell us how that was for you, and how it happened that you ended up in this cult?
Yeah. Oh, well, actually,
was that still in Australia?
Yeah, I was still in Australia.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think I was a seeker, what I would have called a seeker, and I still do, seeking something that some connection with the divine. Again, we can kind of go back to the pregnancy with my mother as that being the start-off point. But anyway, I was looking for something that would help me connect, and I thought, okay, maybe I need a teacher. Mm-hmm. And I was in a little health food shop one day, and there was a poster showing giving details of a talk that was being given. And there was a picture of a woman's face who ended up being my guru, and it kind of jumped out at me. And I took this as a sign. Okay, I'm gonna go and check this out. Mm-hmm. And so I went to the meeting, and I had, at the time, I would have said a very strong spiritual experience. I felt that my heart opened. I felt a connection with this group and with this woman. And I thought, hey, this is it. I'll join. So I did, and I was a very loyal member. You know, I believed that this was the path to help emancipate humanity, which is quite a big thing to believe in your early 20s. But I took it seriously, and so did everybody else in the group.
How big was the group?
Well, it was kind of small in Australia. It was a worldwide group, though. It was, you know, at the time practicing in all over the world. Mm-hmm. So it was quite small, very sincere.
Which kind of things did you do there?
We meditated daily. We met. You know, socially, it was a very beautiful, well-held group. You know, and I believe we're herd animals. You know, us humans, and we like to connect with others. So this became my community, really, and I thought of these people as my brothers and sisters. Right? So we met regularly. We felt that it was really important that we spread the word, you know, and of course if you believe that this is the path that is going to help bring the whole of humanity back to God, then you get, you know, pretty enthusiastic about spreading the word.
Yes.
Yeah.
So which kind of dogmas did you take on?
Well, I suppose I believed that that the guru was God, and that so everything that she said was truth. And there were times when I doubted or questioned some of the truths. But I thought, well, hang on a minute, she's God and I'm a human being. So any doubts that I have or questionings shows up that I'm not as, you know, I'm not as advanced, obviously, as she has. So I would quieten those doubts down. But there was one practice that we had where there was a belief that eating a lot of white sugar would cleanse the liver.
Oh, really?
And that we think too much, and therefore our livers are, overactivated. So we need to have, a lot of white sugar. Now, I mean, now looking back, that seems totally absurd, but I think if we look at it in terms of when we have such a strong instinct and need to belong to a social group, that actually sometimes it doesn't matter what the beliefs are that we take on. We don't even really question them, because we're gluing ourselves together.
Yeah.
So if we have a belief that can separate us from others, and so it enforces and enhances the group that we're in, we'll buy it, really.
Yeah. But you felt really happy there.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, it ticked a lot of boxes.
Yes.
It was my community.
Yes.
And I had some very strong, beautiful experiences. And my sense of devotion, I was a very devotional person, very loyal.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of my makeup, really. So I think we can become devoted and loyal to something that is not necessarily good for us either. But we kind of get off on the feeling of devotion and loyalty.
So one day it was decided, I guess, by the guru that you were supposed to marry a disabled man.
Well, I was invited. There was a wedding list, and we were invited to be on it. We didn't have to be on it, but of course, the sign of being devoted and committed, you would want to do everything that the guru had suggested. So although you didn't have to, certainly I felt that my to be a devoted and good pupil, I should go along. And I also thought, look, she's God, and God's going to choose me a perfect partner. So
you
I'm up for it.
You wanted to be loved by God. That's it. Why you did everything what the guru said.
Yeah,
well, I guess that's what we are doing.
I want to please the guru, and she will like me, and so here I am. Here's my free will. Here's everything. I give it all up. And I had a very wonderful marriage too. Yes, he was disabled.
So how was that? Yes, so he was disabled, and how was that for you when?
Well, initially, I mean, it was wonderful. We've got 3 wonderful children, and we lived in an ashram. That was our own choice. And so,
still in Australia?
No, this was in England.
So you moved.
So he's English.
Yes.
And so the arranged marriage was. Then it was decided that it was generally the women that would move to the country of the man that they were marrying.
Yeah.
So I was in my early 20s. I was up for adventure. And I thought, okay, this is great. So I did.
Yeah.
And of course, because I was so devoted to the movement, in a sense, for me, it didn't matter where I was in the world. I could be anywhere. It was okay because I was still with the wider community, the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had a really beautiful relationship with this man?
I had a good relationship, and I was part of this beautiful community.
Yeah.
And then the doubts crept in, and there were certain things that were happening that I wasn't happy with. So that little part of the discerning part that says, hang on a minute, what's going on here? It was in the background for a little while. And I realized that I was afraid to question. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, how can I be here and how can I be afraid? Because if I'm afraid of something, then I'm holding myself back. And that's not authentic, that's not truthful.
And when these doubts started to come up, was there a possibility to talk with somebody about it, or were you completely on your own?
Well, I mean, I was with a loving bunch of people, but I can't remember if I did talk about it. I think I probably would have felt ashamed of having the doubts, because again, that would have been a reflection on me.
So it's kind of a super ego coming in.
Yeah. So you kind of kept everything at bay.
Yeah.
So I suppose after a little while I was feeling less than. I wasn't feeling authentic. And my heart was closing a little as well. So I thought, hang on, this isn't okay. This isn't right. So, and I found out actually that my husband then had been having doubts for about 3 years, but he didn't want to say anything to me because he felt that if he left the movement, then of course our marriage would dissolve, and he didn't want that. So, so we decided to leave together, and we kind of took the plunge.
That was after 12 years.
That was after 12 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was as scary as hell at first.
Sure.
It was terrifying, really.
Yeah.
Because I felt that I was losing my beloved community. So that was shocking in itself, and I would say very traumatic. And also, I felt like I was cancelling. There was a possibility of me cancelling my spiritual ticket, which is, you know, you can think, wow, I can lose my body, okay, but my God, if I lose my soul, then that's it, you know. And what happens then? You know, eternal damnation.
So when you told this in the ashram that you are going to leave, how did they react?
Well, as I said, everybody was very loving. They were loving people. They were, all the people were in it for the right reasons, and they were very devoted. And I think there was a lot of sadness about us leaving, you know, feeling that there would be a separation. So
did they try to follow you or punish you, or because that sometimes happens?
No, it wasn't quite as dramatic as that. I think there may have been a sense, well, we're having a bit of a holiday, but we'll be back.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I went through a kind of a bit of a chasm, really. I didn't know what to wear. I didn't. I mean, we. So
you had your own uniform in there?
No, we didn't. But I'd become so entrenched in living a particular way that to suddenly have no rules or regulations, or I didn't know what the rules or regulations were anymore. It's like, well, what do you do? You know, we hadn't drunk alcohol, so my first grown-up dinner party in my life, you know, inviting people around, I thought, well, what do you do? You know, people want to drink, and do I have red wine or white wine, or, you know, and what do we talk about? You know, because I can't talk about spiritual stuff anymore because I've left the spiritual group. So there was a lot of doubts, you know, a lot of black holes, really, and it was quite terrifying. I suppose one thing that kept me going was I thought, if there is a God and if God is loving, then how can I be punished for being authentic? And if it's that my ego is so huge and so wrong, then well, I don't know that anyway. So what am I to do? And then I started to think, actually, I got a bit of fight response in. I thought, hang on a minute, this isn't okay that I'm in this position. I shouldn't be in this position fearing that I'm going to go to hell when I'm being truthful as I can possibly be. So I decided to practice a little mantra, and every day I'd go outside and I'd shake my fist at God, or well, at the Guru actually, and I'd swear, you know. And I thought, and there was part of me that thought, you don't do this, you know. In fact, I actually felt for probably a few weeks that God was going to send a thunderbolt, and I know it sounds bizarre, but I'd go outside and I would actually, first of all, I'd look around thinking, okay, so where are the clouds? Are there clouds? Is the thunderbolt going to come and destroy me?
Yeah.
And it was terrifying. But then I started to think, hang on a minute, if God is going to kill me, it's going to happen. You know, I'm not going to be able to look behind my back because God's pretty powerful, so I'm going to be destroyed whatever I do or don't do. And then I started to think, if God is going to send me to hell, then that's kind of got to be a better place than where this particular God is that I think is running the show. And at that point, I started to feel quite liberated. Things kind of turned around.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You said you said that you felt essential qualities coming or arising inside you things which you actually were looking outside of you for.
Yes, yes. I think when the rules and regulations and the belief and the dogma, whatever it is stripped away, then there is room then for something that is more profound and bigger than who we are, that can come through. So I did feel stripped. You know, I didn't know what to believe anymore. I didn't know really how to run my life. I had 3 lovely kids. I was still married at the time, but I didn't have a bigger structure. I didn't know what that structure would be or what it was. So in a sense there was nothing. So it was almost like I gave up. And at that point I thought, I started to feel that that there was something far more real and far more essential that came through, and I felt my courage.
You felt very awake?
I felt very awake. I felt incredibly awake.
And alive?
Yeah.
And free?
And free. And truthful, very truthful. And it was something that was happening that was beyond my personality or beyond my ego as well. I think I let myself, it's a bit like standing in the fire, I suppose. Yeah.
And it all unfolded in quite an intuitive way.
Yes, it did.
Yes, that's the beauty.
Yes.
Yeah, and somehow also your logical mind seemed to guide you.
It was kind of a little bit on the outside, but I did a lot of reality checking.
So how? Like,
well, for example,
how did you do?
Thinking, okay, every time and I was serious. Every time I walked outside, I would look for the thunderbolts, and then my logical brain said, if God's going to kill you off, you know, He's going to do it, whether you look out or whether you don't. You're not going to be able to be careful.
So he finds the moment you're not looking.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, okay, God, just get over and done with. Do it now.
Take me.
You know? And then, of course, the realization that I don't want to be around a God like that. You know, send me to hell. Great. Okay, it's going to be a better place than hanging out with you. So, you know, the rebellious. You know, I talk about the fight. A bit of fight response, fight energy that came in.
Yes.
I got a bit kind of sassy.
Yeah, so we are going to talk about that because you're working now with, I think, with women, and probably men also, who came out of a similar situation.
Yeah, I mean, I work with people who, people who've been traumatized and who have not been able to contact that fight response. So say, for example, somebody is being attacked, and instead of coming into a fight response or the other, which is the flight response, running away, they can't engage, so they go into a freeze response. They get immobilized and frozen. And part of their healing, and in my work with them, would be to help them come out of the freeze and contact this very healthy, instinctive animal brain fight and flight stuff.
Yeah, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about what a trauma is. How does that manifest? What happens in the body through a trauma? And I think it was Peter Levine who was one of your teachers.
Yes. He's still a bit of a hero. Yeah, he teaches what's called somatic experiencing, which is a trauma resolution therapy.
And how, what I also like to know, how did you find this work? What drew you to become a therapist?
Around about, I think it was about the year 2000, I was doing a cranial sacral course, which was a Buddhist-based one. And Franklin Sills, the guy who was running it, was a colleague of Peter Levine's, and had been trying to get Peter Levine over for some time. And so the course that I was doing, the cranial course, the trauma understanding was woven into the course. So I was already very interested in it. And then I read Peter Levine's book, Waking the Tiger, and it made a lot of sense to me. Basically, he studied wild animals for a number of years, and he found that, interestingly enough, although they often get attacked, they're in traumatic situations. They don't have any residual trauma. In other words, if they're attacked when the event is over, they can shake out what's left over, and so then they have no symptoms of PTSD, of trauma at all, and they're 100% of the time they're in their bodies. They are instinctively aware. They're aware of their instincts, and we have a similar nervous system to wild animals, and yet look at us. You know, we have so many symptoms of shock, of trauma, and it sticks, you know, because we haven't been able to release it from our bodies.
So where does it stick?
Yeah, it can stick in the actual physical body. It can show up as symptoms,
like an illness, or
like illness, illness, or aches and pains, you know, muscular problems. And it can also show up psychologically. So, for example, some people who are traumatized can't connect with each other. They have lost the ability to feel safe in the world, or to feel safe with other people. They lose the sense of being, I'm part of the pack, or I'm part of the tribe. So they may have problems with sleeplessness, or they're anxious a lot of the time, or even depressed. So in other words, the instincts have been thwarted. They haven't been able to engage with these instincts. And so my job is to help them release any fight or flight or freeze energy that's stuck in the system.
And how do you do that?
Well,
I know how to do it because I experience it, but just for our audience.
Maybe it would help if I gave an example. Can
Yes,
I give an
please.
Example?
It's always the best.
Yeah. Okay, there's so many to choose. Okay, so I saw a woman a while ago who had a very, very bad shoulder pain all down her arm. And she'd had a little fall which had hurt the right side of the body. She'd been to various osteopaths. She's had a lot of tests done. Any problem on the right had cleared up. But she had this problem on the left that would decide which wouldn't go away. And she'd had it for about 10 or 11 years. And she couldn't kind of move her arm very well. And she also felt a bit stuck in her life. And the osteopath had referred me as a trauma therapist to see, okay, something's not right. In other words, something's being held in her system that may have something to do with trauma. So in the first session, actually, she was talking about how she had decided with her husband to go through an abortion. She had grown-up children. She was in her middle 40s. And there was no way that they could afford, nor did they want to have another child. So a huge decision for a woman to make, or for a couple to make. And it turns out that just before the operation, when she was waiting to go through, the surgeon came through and sat on her bed and said, just want to check that you really want to go through with this. And at that point, she froze. And she thought, I can't do this. I can't do this. And in that moment, she couldn't speak. She was in shock. The surgeon who was writing things down, and he was fairly busy, he said he took it as a yes. And so what we did was that we allowed her body to complete something that was very important, that she hadn't been able to complete. And we did this very slowly. We don't do it all at once because you don't want to overwhelm people. So we did this over probably about 4 or 5 sessions. And what she wanted to do was to put her hand up and say, no, I can't do this. So what had not been able to be completed in her system was purely this action, pushing the arm forward. Now when I was able to give her a little bit of resistance so that she could push the arm and say the no, and of course it was not just that as well. She had to then also feel the feelings that had shut down in that freeze response, which was the guilt, the sadness, the feeling of loss, you know, a lot of big feelings there, which she had to feel safely and in little pieces as well. But when she was able to feel that and go through this motion with the arm, probably in about 4 or 5 sessions, it had completely gone. And I saw her about a year later, and there was no problems at all with this arm and the shoulder. So part of the work is allowing the physical body to complete responses that it couldn't have done, which wild animals do all the time. You know?
And you allow that by just giving it space.
Yes, I mean,
or how do you allow it? How do you invite the body?
Yeah. Well, okay, so we know that in dealing with trauma, we're working with the animal brain, that part of the brain. We're not dealing with the higher brain. Of course that gets involved, it has to. But primarily we're working with the animal brain, and that's where the fight and flight and freeze is held. The doorway to the animal brain is through sensation. In other words, what am I feeling? So in this particular occasion, I started off by saying, okay, what are you feeling in your arm? And so, of course, she knows what she's feeling in her arm.
Yeah.
Part of the work is also allowing the system to build up and have greater resilience, because we have to build up the capacity of the self as we're releasing trauma. Otherwise, it's too much. But yes, by talking through or inviting her to feel what is being felt in the body. So at one point she said, you know, as we were talking, what was coming through the body, through the arm, I'm feeling very emotional. I'm feeling that something's wrong and I don't know what it is. And at this point, we didn't know. She didn't know that this was connected to this abortion which was 10 years earlier. She had no idea. Her symptoms had been triggered by this fall. See? So we know that the body is always trying to heal. You know, we've got this innate sense of the body wants to heal and the nervous system wants to come back to a regulated state. So that's at the primary, if you like, that's the core.
Yes.
So by inviting her to feel what she needed to feel, and by letting things complete in her system, then her whole system was able to integrate. And this, of course, includes these big feelings.
So then the body starts releasing.
Then, yes.
The blocked energy.
Yeah. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes we have what we call a discharge in the nervous system. So, for example, with her arm, I was able to, you know, I held the resistance here, the no. You know, she needed to engage with resistance.
Yeah.
And then by encouraging her to feel the rest of her body, she felt this tingling, which is release, blood flow in the body. So the trauma was actually then beginning to release.
Yeah.
And you know, I had to help her engage with this fight response that says, no, I don't want to do this. I am not going through this. I'm saying no. So we had to allow that fight response then to come through, which is what this was about.
Yes.
Yeah. I sometimes get people up on their feet and get them to push into my hands to engage this, you know, this real animal, primal
Do you find women have more difficulties to do that than men?
Surprise, surprise. Yeah, I mean, I tell you what, I still think to this day, I have yet to find a woman who is what I would say healthily in her fight response.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
I think trauma by definition is our boundaries have been breached. So the sense of self has been breached. Somewhere it's been overwhelming too much too soon. And I think women especially have difficulty in saying, no, I won't. I mean, a lot of women can say, I can't, which is, I will keep going and I will keep going and I'll keep going until it's too much. And then I'll say, I can't. And this is from a place of more of weakness really than will. But to actually stand there and say, I won't. You know, this needs for us to be very aware of our boundaries and how far we can go and when we can say no. And also, when we say no, when we get in touch with our fight response, there's often a bit of an ugliness, you know, there's a sneer that comes through. Yeah, like this. You know, I sometimes get people to do this. And as women, we haven't been brought up to look ugly, you know.
No.
It's not pretty.
Yeah.
It's not pretty. Actually, my partner, Bevis, in my own kind of claiming my own kind of fight response and boundaries, he said, look, practice on me, you know.
Yeah.
Practice on me, and I still have to practice, but
Yeah.
But I think getting back to your original question about me in the movement, the religious movement, I had to engage with that, you know, stuff you know, if you're God, you know, I'm gonna, you can do what you want, okay, I'll go to hell. So I was claiming this, this bit of fight response, and that's when we claim the fight, healthily claim the fight response. That's where our vitality is. That's where vitality is. And we see it in the wild animals, you know. When they engage with the fight and flight, and when the threat is over and they've released what has been left over, there is more vitality. There is more...
Yeah, but you see, the way I see it is that you actually were okay taking responsibility. You know, by saying, no, I do what you want. And I think people who say a lot, I can't, it has to do, don't you think it has to do with being afraid of taking responsibility?
Yeah, yeah. I think, you know, sometimes people have asked me, did I get help at the time? And I didn't get professional help. I think it would have been good if I had.
Yeah.
But I think there was, firstly I was in a situation, in a family situation, in a community situation. This was after I'd left, which held me. So I was well resourced, I think. And I see a lot of people who don't have enough resources or who don't have the capacity and the resilience. I've worked with people who've left countries or left religious groups, and they stay traumatized for a very long time, and they get ill because of it. And this is where we need each other, you know. Again, we're herd animals, and we need the support of each other.
Yeah.
But for some people who are not as resilient, then their ability to adapt is lessened because of that, and that's, you know, that's sad.
Yeah. So one thing I'm interested in talking a little bit about is how trauma not only affects our body mind, but also our coming home. You know, our awakening.
Yeah.
How do you, because, you know, it seems that more and more people are waking up, but it seems they are waking up on a whole pile of traumas. And maybe therefore they are not really able to completely integrate their highest understanding, their highest knowledge.
I think that's a good point, really. It's a very good point. I think a lot of us, I mean, you know, me included, have had mystical experiences or experiences that take us, that kind of turn reality a little, altered states. And I think that that can be a good thing, but is our container, in other words, our body or our sense of self, is that strong enough, is that resilient enough in order for us to hold those experiences and integrate them into the body?
Well, hold the light. It's like a different currents.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you put a huge current through a small bowl,
it's a system which is blocked.
It's going to, well, or it can blow, and hence you get, you know, people with psychotic breakdowns.
Yeah, especially, I mean, as we were talking earlier about this Kundalini experiences, Kundalini arising, which is like a thunderbolt.
Yeah, it can be.
And if the system is not clean or clear,
it can't hold it.
Yeah.
And it's sad. I have seen people who've who have been involved in spiritual paths where there has been altered experiences and they can't contain it, and there is a split. There's then a split in the psyche, and they may have a lot of physical symptoms, and there may be terror as well. And
so when you say split, where are they stuck?
Well, I would say that the split can be in the psyche, so there can be a psychological split.
Right.
So they can't, then it's almost like there are two parts of them or a few parts of them. So we know that in trauma there's often a fragmentation, and the fragmentation can happen within the body, and it can happen also in the psyche. So you've got parts of the self that are fragmented, and this can show up then as severe anxiety, for example. Not feeling that you're settled, that you have a right to be here, that you're integrated, that you're okay. That fragmentation can be literally terrifying.
Yeah.
And then if you hold on to that spiritual truth and you think, this is my, this is God for me, or this is my connection with the divine. But at the same time, you're split, or you're not grounded, and you don't feel good. I mean, how do you marry that? That can make you more crazy, really. So,
and it seems a lot of spiritual paths seem to emphasize also more the absolute reality than life, than the body.
Yeah.
And there's again a split. We want to get into the absolute realities, away from the body, away from the life, because that's divine.
Yes.
And not that.
Yeah. I think we've got to all put our hands in the soil and start planting cabbages, really.
Yes. There isn't anything else. There isn't anything else.
Yeah, this is the container through which we experience the divine. So the more integrated we are, and in terms of nervous systems, the more regulated that we are, then the more we can hold, the more we can contain.
I had, and I might have told you that I had a few months ago somebody here, actually a spiritual teacher. He talked very beautiful about the body, and he said, which I absolutely loved, one is enlightened if the nervous system can no longer be swept away by chemical storms inside. A completely calm nervous system, because awakening takes place in the body on a cellular level, and it's the nervous system which is supporting our awakening.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, but that seems to be such an endless job. To bring balance into our nervous system.
Yeah, I suppose it is. I mean, it doesn't stop moving me, the fact that we have this system, we have an innate capacity to heal.
Yeah.
And that if we are, coming back to the example of this woman with the abortion, with her courage, the story was there. It's like the body knew what to do. And I had to guide the process and follow it. And of course I was tracking her nervous system the whole time, making sure that she wasn't getting overwhelmed and that she could contain the pieces that we did. But her body did it, her system knew. And to see that, it's seemingly miraculous to see that unfold. And in her ability to feel these feelings, guilt, regret, sadness, loss, that she had parked, they got stuck. And as she began to feel them, and as this started we engaged with the fight response, then her whole system started to regulate. And as it regulated, and what that means, what does it mean to have a regulated system? It means that we can then contain ourselves and contain more of life and more creativity, more of who we are. so that, you know, I believe quite firmly that somebody who can integrate, say, loss, as she could, is then able to love more. You know, if we can integrate fear, if we can feel these feelings and have them integrated, then we can be more courageous. You know, we can be more.
We can be more.
We can be more.
So you also talk about, you know, the damage which can be done. We touched a little bit about it already. When we do tantric, just when we want to meet the divine, and all the things we try to do to come closer to experiences, the drugs we're taking. We talked about ayahuasca earlier, and the beauty and the dangerous side, if we are not grounded enough.
Yes, I think certainly too, if we're involved in a tradition, we live in a country where there is a tradition, some of these practices, I mean, I can't, it's certainly not my right to criticize, you know, what's good and what's not good. I can see in the people that I work with sometimes some of these altered states that have split them. So a lot of it depends, of course, on that person's container and how big they are, how able they are to adapt. And I think, you know, when we do want to engage in spiritual practices, that some altered states are, you know, obviously that's going to happen. You know, we need to kind of sometimes get away from the higher brain or see things in a slightly different way. And then that's okay. You know, I certainly can't criticize that. But we have to embody it. You know, we have to bring it back home. This is home.
This is home.
This is home.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I know from myself, when I started my spiritual path, I had so many spiritual experiences and insight, and I could do all of a sudden all kinds of miracles and things, and I got further and further away from myself or from this body. And I remember Ian really had to sometimes take me by the hand and go with me crossing the street. You know, I was completely, lived completely in other realms. But then there was the day where I returned to my life, to the body, and that's very rewarding. So you're right, this is home. So in your daily life now, do you have a practice? How do you stay grounded? Where are you now?
I think I got to a point where I had to say to myself that my own looking after was more important than the people I worked with. And actually that went really against the grain. Because I think that like a lot of people, I feel that I'm here for service, and that certainly through the trauma work, this is kind of my path. You know, I'm going to take it to the grave. I love it, but I had to then realize that I had to look after myself more, and I couldn't even say I'm looking after myself more so that I can look after other people. There had to be a full stop to that. And the irony was that when I started to look after myself more, then the people I worked with, they felt it, you know, and it served them. I mean, for example, I'm off on Monday to a retreat in Italy, in Umbria. And I went on a similar one last year it's called Nourishing the Heart. And there was a beautiful little practice. It was just a little exercise that just had me in bits that we had to do. Where we were invited just to put our arms around ourselves like this and hold ourselves, and to to meditate on all the people that we felt we had loved and we had served, whether it was our children or our family or our patients or clients or whatever, and feel that they were loving us back. And I mean, even now I can feel it. You know, I was in bits.
Yeah.
That I was receiving something, and it was very, very powerful. And for me, these kind of experiences, you know, if I go off and do something like this, where I open myself to receive.
Yeah.
Italy is a good place to do this kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
Lovely vineyards down the road and good Italian food and roses and things. But I certainly, you know, being in a nourishing relationship is wonderful, and growing the veg, walking the dog, you know, these kind of normal, down-to-earth kind of things are ways that I feel I receive and can help kind of stabilize myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
So life is home.
Life is home.
Finally. You made it.
Yeah, I'm here.
I think that's a beautiful point to stop, Christine.
Oh, really? We have to stop?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. I know the time goes so fast in these interviews. Well, it was really great talking to you and having you here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for watching Conscious TV, and I'm sure I see you again soon. Bye-bye.